And Gianfranco, hello Gianfranco. Thank you for attending from Delhi, Gianfranco. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Reshma Nayyar. Today is the 6th of our series of talks on Italian art history, and particularly on the illusionistic ceiling paintings. Today we take you, as they say, all roads lead to Rome, no? So we take you back to La Città Eterna, and we take you to Rome, and to handhold us and take us across this lovely landscape is our inimitable Reshma Nayyar. Reshma, this is for you.
Thank you, Anupam.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to turn my timer on because I don't want to go over time. All right. Let me just get my PowerPoint going.
We have Baciccio and Andrea Pozzo today.
Yes.
As artists whose capolavori will be discussing.
Absolute capolavori, yes. Just want to see how to. Okay. So, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. In today's presentation, I'm going to talk about the illusionism in two very, very large nave ceiling paintings in two Jesuit churches in Rome. The first one is the image you're looking at on the screen. It's by the artist Giovanni Batista Gauli, known by his nickname Baciccio. So I'm just going to write that out in Hindi.
Is the screen visible to everyone? Reshma, I can't see your screen actually.
I haven't shared it? Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies. Just one moment.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, it's good. It's good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so the image you can see now on your screen is the nave ceiling painting in the Church of the Gesù in Rome. It was painted by an artist called Giovanni Battista Gauli. So Giovanni Battista is John the Baptist. Gauli was his last name, and he was known. He is known as Baciccio. So you might see references to him either as Gauli, Gaulli, or as Baciccio. So this is how you pronounce it if you speak Hindi. Baciccio. Okay. The second nave ceiling painting we'll be looking at is Andrea Pozzo's nave ceiling in a different church. So let me just write his name out in Hindi, Putzo. Both the churches are Jesuit churches. Basically, Ignatius of Loyola founded an order within the Catholic Church. So the way you have Franciscans and Dominicans, Ignatius founded by St. Francis and St. Dominic, Ignatius founded the Society of Jesus. Now, the members of the Society of Jesus are known as Jesuits. So when I say a Jesuit church or Jesuit anything, it means to do with the Society of Jesus, which was founded by Ignatius of Loyola. So he was canonized in 1622 along with his companion, St. Francis Xavier. Okay. Now, the Society of Jesus had lay as well as religious members. So the priests and the clergy are called Jesuits. They're religious. Okay, they take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Jesuits take an additional fourth vow of obedience to the Pope in matters of mission. They were great missionaries. They were great educationalists. In addition to these what I'm just going to loosely term full religious members, they also have what are called lay Jesuit members. So lay Jesuits, they are not priests, they are not the clergy, but they are Jesuits. And one very important one for today's topic is the artist Andrea Pozzo. So Andrea Pozzo is was a Jesuit, a lay Jesuit artist, and he wrote a very important treatise which was illustrated with his works. I will talk about that in just a bit. Okay. About the Society of Jesus. The image you see on the left of the screen is the facade of its mother church. So the name of the church in Italian is Chiesa del Santissimo Nome del Gesù, the church of the most holy name of Jesus, or the holy, if you just say holy name, it's understood as the holy name of Jesus. Not just the holy name of Jesus, the name Jesus is the holy name. Okay, I will get back to this in a moment. I just want to, I hope this won't close the presentation. Okay, I just want to point out all these terms below at the bottom left. Chiesa del Gesù, Il Gesù, Church of the Gesù, the Gesù. They all refer to this church, the first Jesuit church. The site was selected by Ignatius. Building began after he passed away. And it is the mother church of the Society of Jesus. It's the Jesuit Mother Church. And when I speak about the Gesù, this is the church I'm talking about. Okay. I want you to note this portion in the center. Oops, excuse me. Why is just above the central doorway, there is a representation of the letters IHS surmounted by a cross and with 3 nails below. The IHS is actually Latin and not English. I'm calling it IHS, but it's a representation of the holy name, simply because in Greek, the name Jesus was written as Jesus, okay? I-E-S. In Latin, the I-E-N-S was represented as what I'm calling in English, the I-H-S. So if we talk about the Jesuit monogram or the monogram I-H-S, we're talking in this context of the Jesuit monogram, which appears on almost every Jesuit work of art. One thing to keep in mind, the symbol IHS, the monogram IHS, predates the Jesuits. So it can also refer to Saint Bernardino da Siena, and it can just be a representation of the holy name. It does not mean that every time you see it, it has something to do with the Society of Jesus. But when you see it in a Jesuit context, it is definitely representing not just the holy name, but also the monogram of the society itself. Okay. When you enter the Gesù, so let's assume we enter through this central doorway and you look up, this is what you see, this enormous composition, which I will break down for you. But for right now, I want to point out one thing. This central portion that just looks like a blinding burst of light is actually a representation of the Jesuit monogram. It's a representation of the holy name in the form of the Jesuit monogram. So it has the IHS, it has the cross, and if you look very carefully, there's a heart pierced with 3 nails. Keep this in mind, because when we look at the images as we go forward in the presentation, the IHS is not really visible, because if you focus on the IHS, everything else goes out of focus. The composition was executed by Baciccio, who was a protege of the great Baroque artist Gian Lorenzo Bernini. And Bernini had a part to play in this composition. He was the one responsible for Baciccio actually getting this composition. And he is recorded as having given Baciccio the idea to cast a great shadow over the composition. So for now, I'm just going to point out the great shadow. These areas of shadow were suggested by Bernini. We will look at details very soon. I want to just compare very quickly the facade of the Gesù on the left and the Chiesa di Sant Ignazio on the right. So that's the Church of Saint Ignatius, which is dedicated to Ignatius of Loyola, which was constructed later, much later than the Gesù. And when you enter this church through its central doorway and you look up, this is the composition you see. We will look at details soon. For now, I will, okay, I think this is upside down. I apologize for that. It's upside down. I have it correct in the other ones, I hope. Yes. So here on the right, when you enter the Church of Saint Ignatius and look up, this is what you see. Now, just to get orientations correct, because it can be confusing, I'm going to ask each of you, I assume all of you have a cell phone or something rectangular nearby that you can just pick up. With a cell phone, it's very easy to know which is the side that's up. So imagine that any composition of these two that we're discussing, you know which is right side up. Now hold that above you so that the arrow is pointing towards your back. Okay, that is how when you look up, you see these compositions, the larger images that I have on the screen. It's a little complicated to explain details because the same image, if you look at the central floor plans that I have and assume we're walking into the church from the central entrance, kind of like a sandwich, and we're the filling. So the floor plan is the bottom layer. We walk in, and when we look up, we see the ceiling painting. And what we see is, for instance, in the Gesù, what you see on the left. When we look up, this is what we're going to see. And in the Church of St. Ignatius, you look up, and this is what you will see. Okay? One other point I would like to make. The images that you're looking at right now on the left and right, so the entire ceiling, loosely, the entire ceilings. The viewpoint we have right now is of a spectator, of a viewer who is standing in the center, beneath it, the exact center, and looking up. Okay? And the reason that is important, now we're talking about the Gesù. So you enter the Gesù from the center, and if you come the central doorway and you stand in the center and you look up, this is what you're going to see, the image on the left. But if you stand here, right at the entrance, and then you look up, this is what you see. So the orientation, the illusionism in this ceiling painting is oriented towards, primarily towards a viewer who is standing at the red dot that I marked in this area and looking up. And you can compare the two images and see how much the positioning of the painted and sculpted forms appears to change. So the actual position is the same, but it looks a little different. The proportions are a little different. And this is important when we look at the details. You will see how foreshortening and the sotto and su perspective are used to make it appear as if this tangled mass of figures over here is falling not down straight as you see in the left, but down into the area that we are occupying. Okay. Again, I'll just point out this central IHS that in many of the images I'll show you, you will not really see it, but I want you to be aware that the IHS, the Jesuit monogram, the holy name, is right in the center of that bright area. One other point, this central bright holy name is illusionistically what animates the entire composition. So I will show you details, but for now, I just want you to understand that here on the right is the focal point of the composition. It's the holy name of Jesus, to which the church is dedicated, and which the Society of Jesus is named after. And the entire composition includes these white three-dimensional sculpted figures that flank the windows. Okay, when we look at details, it's not possible to see everything, so very often these get cropped out. So when I speak about the figures flanking the windows, these are the figures I'm talking about, and they are arrayed to the side of the central holy name. Okay, now last image before we start looking closely at the ceiling itself. Image on the left, you have a viewer standing here and looking straight up. Okay, image, so that's this viewer. Image on the right is viewer standing here and looking up like this. That's this image. Okay? So the primary viewing point is this one. And the secondary viewing points include the one in the center, as well as walking all around and looking up at details along the sides. Okay, now to break down the composition, to kind of understand it, I've just taken 4 parts very roughly along the ribs of the vault, the base. So if you have part number 1 is this area where you have a titulus, okay? And you can't read everything on the titulus, and it's in Latin, but those who could read Latin, the moment they saw the few letters which I've highlighted in yellow over here, excuse me, in the name of Jesus. So you can see Jesu, Jesus, omne genu flectatur, every knee shall bend. And then it goes on, and you can see terrestrium, which means on the earth. So basically, this is Philippians 2:10, and it says, at the name of Jesus, every knee should or shall bend, of the knees of things in heaven, the things in earth, and things under the earth. So every living being. So that's the first part of the composition, the way I'm breaking it down. The second part is the focal point. The third includes all these figures encircling the focal point, okay? Which, when you look straight up, you see this, but to see the sides, you would have to be with your back towards one of the sides and looking across for them to view the figures correctly. We will look at the details in just a moment. So that's 3, and 4 is this roughly triangular mass of figures. I should mention the figures on the sides flanking the windows, the sculpted figures, are included with part 3. So the figures in adoration of the holy name. Some of the details, and here we can see the illusionism very well. Actually, before I do that, let me just. This part is the entire composition, which you have a rough idea how it's composed. this image is actually, let's see, over here. Okay, so when you're looking up with your back towards the side of the right side, and you look up, you see these figures. This portion is here, this portion is here, and this portion is here. Okay, so I've oriented them for our viewpoint right now, but if you wanted to see them in this orientation, you would have to walk around the nave and turn. Okay, here you can see a king. He has fleur-de-lis decorations on his cape, and there's a crown over here. So this is a reference to the French king. You can see other figures. Notice this figure who has his hands raised and his face facing the focal IHS. Look at his feet. Okay, this is classic di sotto in su. You look up and you see this figure seemingly dangling in midair, seated on a cloud. Okay, the gilded areas that you see are part of the architecture. So they're architectural sculpture. They have symbolic meaning, biblical associations, and all of these figures have attributes with which they can be identified. I want you to focus on this shadow that you can see. So over here, Baciccio has painted. What he did was built up a stucco layer that overlaps the central fresco field, comes out all over the architectural decoration, and he painted above that. Okay? So the portions that are ostensibly below are in shadow, and he continues that shadow onto the stucco area, increasing, heightening the illusionism of a three-dimensional composition. Okay, in this portion, you have, this is right below the IHS, figures, female saints with lots of angels and cherubs. You can see the light rays clearly over here that are emanating from the IHS. And if you look very closely, you can just see a detail. Oops, okay, I can't use the stylus. Let me see. If you look at this area here, this white hand is part of a stucco angel. Let me just go back. Okay, here. So if you look on the left, these stucco figures in white are three-dimensional angels attached to the ceiling above our heads. So they are actually projecting into space. This is not illusionistic. Now, it's a little unclear how we're supposed to read it, because if you're just looking at it as if it's a frame, they're holding the frame up. But we know that we're actually looking up, like in the at the right. So they are floating parallel to the floor. Okay, the other details very quickly, and then we'll move on. Here you have the figures in shadow from the triangular mass who are plummeting downwards, apparently. And if you notice, they're very muscular, but they also have certain deformities or characteristics that indicate that they are not blessed. So you can see bat type of wings over here. You can see horns coming out of the faces. If you look very closely over here, there's a figure. This figure here has an ass's ears, a donkey's ears. And at the bottom, you can just see this detail of one of the three-dimensional white stucco angels who is supporting the frame. Okay. Figure of a pope over here. And you know he's a pope because you can see the papal tiara behind him on his cape, and a detail up here of the titulus. And you can see the inscription in gilded lettering. You can see paired angels arrayed around it. Okay. I just want to very quickly, very briefly touch upon the identification of the figures. So there are so many figures in this composition. Some of them have been securely identified. Some, there are tentative identifications that may or may not be accurate. So I'm going to give you an example of one that we know is accurate, and that is this figure over here. So an older female figure who clutches in her hands, in her left hand, a red bag which has coins inside, and in the right a little model of a temple or church. This is a representation of the vice of simony. Simony was the sale of church office or church favors for money. And the image you're looking at now is an illustration for simony, the personification of simony with the details. So over here, it starts off in Italian saying, a woman covered with a black veil, but you can see her hands and her bare legs, both of them leprous. She holds in her right hand a little temple, and there's a dove on top of it with its thing and the bag of money. So this gives you an idea of how the identifications, on what basis the identifications have been made. The image you're looking at on the left is from the website of the church, and it's in Italian, but it has quite a few identifications, which, as I mentioned, some of them are secure, some are tentative. Okay, what's new in terms of illusionism in this composition? Bernini, the mentor of Baciccio, is known for incorporating what he called the Bel Composter into his compositions. Two Italian words, bel, bello, beautiful, composto, composition, organization. So it basically means a fusion of media. When Bernini conceived of his sculpture and architecture, he often had hidden light sources, and he had his sculptural elements spilling over into the architectural space. And here in Baciccio's composition, you can see that happening. So you have what looks like a central frame, which seems to be held up by these actual three-dimensional angels, and the painted portion spills over into the architectural space and the composition. So the central IHS relates not just to the painted images, but also to these sculpted figures flanking the windows. So here I have images of some of the sculpted figures. They are personifications, so they are not actual figures that can be identified, like the King of France, for instance. But so here on the left, you can see the two keys, the papal keys. So this is a personification that alludes to the papacy, okay, to papal power. And here there's a little Putzo holding up this figure's crown, so it alludes to temporal power, and so on. Some of the the these personifications include personifications of the continents of Europe, Asia, America, and Africa. So let me just see if I can find, oh yes, here you go. So over here, can you make out the crocodile snout? Over here. So that's a personification of the Nile, representing Africa, okay? Or a personification of Africa with its attributes being the crocodile representing the Nile. Okay? Note also these sculpted pairs of putti that seem to be engaged in joyful activity, and they connect visually this, if you look on the left, you'll see all these white sculpted figures, including the angels, including the Titulas. They tie together the entire composition. So in terms of color, you have monochrome gilded architectural background or detailing. You have white sculpted figures, and you have multicolor painted figures. And all of these work together in a Bel Composter, this fusion of the mediums of painting, sculpture, and architecture that make this ceiling very innovative in terms of its illusionism. A quick comparison with Annibale Carracci's Farnese ceiling, where the quadro riportato was very clearly supposed to represent a painting that had been moved from the wall and put on the ceiling. Okay? Over here in Baciccio's work, that is not the case. There is an allusion to the quadro riportato type of paintings, but it is not a quadro riportato, because what is happening is this huge frame actually is supposed to represent an opening into the sky. And what you're seeing is a miraculous event. So it's not just that he depicts a miraculous event that you as a passive spectator look at. It is an activated composition, and you as a viewer are have the opportunity to participate in this miracle, not just passively look at it. Another comparison with Pietro Dakotona's Barbarini ceiling. So if you remember in this, we have the quadratura, the architectural framework that divides it into one primary panel, which is to be read along with the one below it, and the other panels which have different viewpoints, right? But they're very carefully delineated. There is no doubt as to where you need to stand to look at it correctly. In Baciccio's composition, it is more unified. There's no compartmentalization like in Pietro Dakotona's. So it's more organic. As you walk around and you turn, different figures start coming into their correct orientations for your viewpoint at that moment. Okay, I don't know what's happening here. This should not have happened. So this,
Reshma,
yes.
May I just interrupt because
Sure.
it is in context. Let me just ask a few questions in context,
Sure.
which have been sent by many of the participants.
Sure.
So one is that these sculptures, were they also made by Baciccio or by somebody else?
They were designed by him. He had a workshop. We have the names of the sculptors, Antonio Raggi and others who sculpted them. Okay.
That is one.
So he did the painting. He designed the sculptures.
And the second one is, you see these, you have the central section and then you have these
I'm sorry, Anupam, a little louder, please.
Okay, so we have this central section with the painted section.
Yes.
And then we have the architectural elements, you know, the curved, the vault, and then you have these gesso and wooden flowers and all these things there.
Yes.
Then we have the dark gray clouds. You know, the dark gray clouds that are in between this, the section of the wall that's coming down and the ceiling, so to speak.
Yes.
So are these painted because they are throwing shadows also? Is that all illusionistic?
Yes. So actually, this is the slide I need, because for some reason in the slide I was looking at, the central image was not coming up. Let me just explain what I was going to explain, and then I'll come back to what you just mentioned. It will actually be clear then. So the way, for now, just look at the image on the left, and let's assume this is us. Okay, this represents us. We walk into the church and we look up. Now, over here is the IHS, okay, somewhere up, way above the ceiling, because this frame is at this level, okay, illusionistically. We have the frame at that level. And somewhere on the top is the IHS, which is surrounded by lots and lots of little cherubs. So if you, let me just zoom in here. Can you see all these figures, little cherubs? And then you see the clouds, and the clouds begin above the church and they enter into the church. So you have the clouds at this level, and they're coming inside the church. And seated on the clouds and mingling amidst the clouds are little cherubs. There are saints, okay, little larger saints, and there are the larger saints seated on the clouds. So this is the way the composition is supposed to this is what the composition is supposed to portray illusionistically. Does that answer the question?
It answers it, yes, to one extent.
Okay.
But the other arm of the question is, that means that these clouds, which are throwing these shadows onto the, you know, the gilded sort of aspect of the ceiling, these are not three-dimensional forms. They are pure painting, right?
Oh, yes, they are pure painting, but
yes.
But let me say this. This major frame, when I say frame, I just mean this part, right? Mm-hmm. This protrudes from the wall, just like a lot of the gilded decorations. It protrudes up to 4 inches approximately in different places. So where the painting, look at the image on the right now. So where, for example, this mass of clouds, right? It starts inside, but then it comes out. What Baciccio did was he built up the base over the architectural frame, the gilded portion. He built up the gesso base, extended it over here along the window, and then colored it in. Not only did he color the stucco portion overlapping the gilded stucco, he also painted the shadow, as you see here, on portions of the gilded stucco.
I think that
okay, does that answer it?
Yeah, that explains it extremely beautifully. Thank you so much, Reshma.
Okay,
so if you can see this green circle that I've made.
Yes.
So that means this green circle, for the benefit of everybody. So this green circle, this building that you see here, and this sort of a relief motif that you see here, this is all three-dimensional and part of the architectural fabric, right?
Yes, I just refer to it as architectural sculpture or architectural decoration. It is gilded stucco. So it's yes, it protrudes. It is not like, for example, in Annibale Carracci's, where it's all painted. This is three-dimensional stucco.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, these portions in red have stucco base overlapping and painted. Okay, so it's really a fusion of the media.
So I think that is extremely clear. So just adding on to answer, because of this, the next question that was there. So sure. Who was that? Errol Fernandez. So she had asked that, are the frescoes painted over the gilded background or painted between breaks gap of the background?
What's the second part? Or painted between?
Or painted between breaks or gaps of the background. So basically what Fernandez wants to know is, Errol wants to know, so that means you have these, architectural decoration, right? which has lime plaster and things like that, and gesso, and then it has a bowl on it and gilding on it. Okay.
Yes.
Now, the areas where these clouds and other things are, that area is devoid of any gilding. I'm just giving the clarification. It's devoid of any gilding, and it is here that the painting has been done.
So,
right? Whereas the shadows are on the gilding, on the gilded decoration.
yes, that's correct.
So, Errol, I hope that answers your question.
Thank
you, Reshma. You explained it really well.
Well, let me just say something that I'm not 100% sure of. Beneath the stucco that goes into the, I'm just going to call it the window area, okay, outside the frame. Beneath that, I'm not 100% sure it actually has all the architectural detailing and then was built up, or it was marked out and it has only the stucco base. I don't know. The point is, it was just done in a way that it looks like the heavens have opened up, so that, or rather, the roof of the church, the ceiling of the church is opened up to the heavens, and the clouds and the beings from heaven are entering the church, the top area. Okay.
And before you move on to the next one, this is
Yes.
the last one I'm taking in this phase of the talk.
Yes.
An anonymous query has been that any idea what text is in the non-blessed man's hands?
Any idea what
text is in the non-blessed man's hands?
Yeah, probably something that has been deemed heretical by the Catholic Church. So probably Protestant writings, writings by Calvinists. Yeah, I don't know exactly which one, but that would be the reference.
Okay, and then talking about holding things, some of the angels are holding frames.
Holding frames?
Somebody has observed that some angels are holding frames, so they're asking, are they paintings too, or?
I would need.
I think this is a query all the way from Nepal.
Okay, I'll answer that at the end of the talk, because I don't know which one. Rather than look for it right now, I can go over the slides and the person can tell me which one.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to take the questions at this stage.
Okay, of
Thank
course.
you, Rich.
So just remind me, Anupam, at the end, because I don't know what he's referring to, but I'd like to find out. Okay, let me just repeat one other thing. So this triangular mass of figures that seem to be plummeting downwards. I'm just going to focus. Oh my God, this is so annoying. Can you see my pointer, the hand, the white hand? Okay, it's not. So this figure. Okay. So look at this figure over here, who's covering his eyes because he can't bear that light. So the visually, we're supposed to read this as this mass of figures, which includes all these deformed vices, are figures that cannot bear the light of Jesus, that cannot bear the power of the power of the holy name, and that's why they are being repelled downwards. Okay, let me move on. Okay, this image is the one we just looked at, so that's fine. I'm going to move on since I will run out of time otherwise. Yeah. We looked at the details, foreshortening, the slope to and through. This we've seen. This is not new. This is it's been used before. Now I want to begin with the ceiling painting by Andrea Pozzo in the Church of Saint Ignacio, Saint Ignatius. So if you look on the right, you have the Jesuit Monogram in the Church of the Jesuit. This is what activated the entire composition. So that miraculous light, this powerful light from the holy name that draws people towards it, who appear to levitate upwards, and that repels the vices down onto the ground. Okay? In the center, you have a detail from the Putzo's nave ceiling. Okay? And this is Saint Ignatius, and this is Christ with the cross. It's the risen Christ. And here you have God the Father and the dove of the Holy Spirit. So this is the Trinity, and this is Ignatius. For now, I'm going to ask you only to keep in mind that if we take, oh, I'm not doing this correctly. If we take the mathematical center, you get Christ in the center, okay? But Ignatius is more visible, and again, this is illusionistic, because the colors are richer and darker, because apparently he is closer to us. So when we're looking up, Christ is much higher up. It's a little like the IHS. It is the highest spatially as compared to what surrounds it. So when you enter the Church of St. Ignatius and you look up at the nave ceiling, this is what you see. Now, before I talk about the ceiling, I want to talk about the fictive dome fresco in the church. So on the left, you have the ground plan of the Church of St. Ignatius. So you enter it, and if you read over here, it doesn't say cupola or dome, it says mock cupola, a fictive dome. The image in the center of the slide is from Parma Cathedral. It's Correggio's fresco in Parma Cathedral. And it's a view taken from the center beneath the fresco. You look up and this is what you see. Okay? On the right, you have a view of the fictive dome, the fictive cupola, as if you're standing in the nave. So you're standing somewhere here and you're looking here and you look up and this is what you see. And it looks like a ribbed dome with an opening in the center for the lantern. But actually, it is a fictive dome. So this image that you see in the center now is a photograph taken standing right below the dome. So if you stand below the dome in Parma, this is your center, and then, you know, equidistant to the sides. You stand beneath the dome in the Church of Sant Ignacio, and what should be the center is not the center, because that's not a real dome. It's just a painting on canvas that has been put there. Very quickly, the reason is they were running out of money. There were other issues. So what Andrea Pozzo did was, instead of building a dome, he painted on canvas a mock dome, which would look correct for anyone walking into the church till about this point. Okay? Beyond this, when you go, the illusion doesn't work, because it doesn't center itself, as it were. Okay. On the left, two screenshots from Andrea Pozzo's treatise on painting and architecture, and his rendering of the elevation of Saint Ignatius. Now, this is very interesting, okay? Because Saint Ignatius actually does not have a dome. Let me just go ahead and show you the view from an aerial view from Google Maps. So this is the church, and where you would expect a dome just has some kind of eaved roof, but it's not a dome. Let me see if I can focus. Yeah. If you look very carefully, here there's the letter A and here is the letter B. Okay. So there's a letter A and a letter B. Actually, this church does not have a dome. This is the roof. There's just a roof that might at most go up to where I've written A and B, but there is no dome above it. Okay. And here's what is written in the treatise. It says, I'm giving you the elevation lengthwise for the Church of St. Ignatius with all its measures, and I have put the cupola or dome as it should have been, but it's not yet built because I have actually appoggiato is placed il telaro, a canvas, along the points A and B for the painted dome. So actually, this area, these two circles showing your A and B, is where the dome ends in height. But when you look from inside, from a spot where the illusion works, it's as if it projects up much, much further. Okay, all this is important because in Putzo's treatise, he has exact drawings, engravings, which show how the calculations he made and how he composed his painting for the fake dome. Okay, so here you can see the photograph of the dome and his engravings for it. Other parts of the treatise have to do with the architectural, the painted representations of architectural features in the nave painting. So now I'm talking about the nave painting. Okay, so you can see consoles that appear to project outwards, and he shows how he worked up the quadratura. Now, we talked about quadratura briefly when we, especially during the Sistine ceiling lecture. Quadratura is a word that refers to a fictive architectural framework. So in any ceiling painting where the artist paints fictive architectural framework that appears to continue the architecture of the space upwards much more than it actually exists, is called quadratura. And on the right, you have a drawing. This is not an engraving. This is a preparatory drawing by Andrea Pozzo for his ceiling in the Church of St. Ignatius. And so this is what he conceived when he had his final plan ready. It was transferred to the ceiling. He explains how he did it in his treatise. And after that, he painted the figures, which we looked at. We looked at the details of the figures where we have Ignatius and Christ in the center. There is, so here you can see the details of the quadratura, the way he has it in the treatise and the way it appears in the actual painting. Quick comparison with Michelangelo's use of quadratura. So you remember he used the quadratura to for two main reasons. One was to make the lateral views more coherent, and the second was to delineate the entire composition in a manner that would make it more rational. Okay. Putzo goes way above and beyond with the quadratura. He bases the entire composition on quadratura. It is a masterpiece of illusionistic painting, quadratura painting. The entire area is as if there's this enormous architectural structure continuing into the skies, and then in the skies you can see this miracle happening, which is Christ and Ignatius connected by rays of light, and the rays of light then spreading from Ignatius to different figures. Amongst the figures, so I'm just going to point out these four figures, which are personifications of the continents. There is, unlike in Baciccio's work, where some of the figures are not very easily identifiable, here Putzo has them labeled. So very clearly you have America with a headdress representing Native Americans. You have Africa with an elephant's tusk, okay, and darker skin. Europa with, I don't know, it looks like a horse. Maybe it's a bull, that would be more appropriate. And Asia, okay, with a camel. Another important element, very important in this composition, is this angel here carrying a shield. And look at what's on that shield. The monogram of the Society of Jesus, the holy name. So this entire composition, the apotheosis of Saint Ignatius, is an allegory of, and you will find this as an alternate title for the work, the allegory of the missionary work of the Society of Jesus, or the missionary work of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Okay? So the idea, the message being conveyed in this painting, and I forgot to mention, Andrea Pozzo had written a letter to the king or the prince of Liechtenstein, in which he explained his composition. So this is not something that we are guessing at. We know what he was trying to depict. So it is the light of Christ that, thanks to Ignatius, is reflected into the four corners of the world, the four continents, and all these figures that you see around it include angels, they include other Jesuit saints. This figure in black is Saint Francis Xavier, who is positioned close to Asia, because that's where his missionary work took him. Okay, almost at the end now. This is a fantastic image from a book called Mirabili Bisingani, which has a grid and it shows you mathematically how it's composed. I'm just going to point out two things. I can get to the zoom function. Yeah. So here's the center where you have Christ. And notice this line, how it is perfectly aligned with the columns. This is exactly what Quadrature is all about. We don't probably notice it, but for those who are trained architects, those who during Putzo's time were familiar with architecture, mathematics, this would have been obvious. Okay? They would look at it and they would know that this Quadrature is always based on mathematical relationships. And in terms of composition, Putzo has Christ at the center, as I said earlier, but the darker, or rather the figure that's marked out and more prominent is Saint Ignatius of Loyola. And rationally, when you look at the painting, this makes sense because Christ is much further up. So the further up the figures are, the more indistinct they become. Okay? So it's a very rational composition. Having said that, I will also say that there are elements in the architecture that are not canonical, if you will. So he has certain decorative elements that work very well for the composition visually, but would not have been accepted in real architecture. So Putzo does take artistic license in what he has done. Okay, I am going to just take a few minutes to go over the ceilings we've looked at, and then I will take questions. As I go over each of these ceilings, I'm just going to refer maybe once or twice to the Gesù or the Sant Ignacio ceilings, and you know which ones they are. The Gesù one is the one with the aegis, that is the focal point. The Sant Ignacio one is the one with Christ and Saint Ignatius as the focal point. Okay, so on the left, you have the first ceiling we looked at in the series in the Camera degli Sposi in Mantua. You have an opening to the sky, right? You look up and you can see the blue sky. Top center, you have Correggio's San Giovanni Evangelista, the vision of Saint John the Evangelist. So he has a vision of Christ, and Christ is in the sky, and we're looking up at apostles seated on the clouds around him. But Christ, in the Soto and Su perspective, is hovering in midair above us. The sky that you see in this dome is a miraculous sky, right? It's a divine sky. It's not the sky of our daily lives. On the left, in Mantegna's Camera degli Sposi oculus, you see a blue sky with clouds, which is supposed to be, you know, the kind of sky you would see if you looked up on a bright, clear day. Okay. Bottom center, Giulio Romano's Hall of the Giants. The central portion has a form of quadratura because it's architectural, and it is extending the space upwards. Okay, it has columns, and the columns are topped with a dome. On the right is Parma Cathedral, similar to San Giovanni Evangelista, where you have this miraculous sky. I will just point out one thing to keep in mind. Both of Correggio's works, so the two images on the right, these are in domes. So they have, it's a smaller area, and it has a very steep curvature in all directions, right? Because it's a dome. Unlike in vaulted ceilings. So on the left, you have Michelangelo's Sistine ceiling. On the right, you have Annibale's Farnese ceiling. Both of them are vaulted ceilings, and both artists have used very different ways of creating their compositions. Michelangelo uses something that is very unusual, but also he had a topic that was extremely unusual, and he used quadratura to frame, pardon the pun, frame his overall composition in a more coherent manner. Annibale Carracci uses quadri di portati, and he imbues the entire composition with a lot of witty allusions based on the depiction of different materials. So fiction in the type of materials depicted. It's all painted, but so many different types of materials. Pietro Dakotona and Andrea Sacchi's ceilings in the Palazzo Barbarini. Andrea Sacchi's ceiling, again, a miraculous sky, which is just, you see the sky, that's it. There's no framing structure as such. You look up and you see this miraculous depiction of the throne of divine wisdom seated on a throne along with her attributes. Pietro Dacotona's central portion is open to the sky. Okay, the side panels are also somewhat open to the sky, but the side panels are not meant to be viewed in as much of a Soto and Su perspective. So they are compartmentalized for several reasons. One of the things that happens with this compartmentalization is it works with the different kinds of viewpoints depicted in each panel. Baciccio and Andrea Pozzo's ceilings are unified in the sense like Correggio's domes. They have one space that is depicted with an overarching scheme. So Baciccio's Illusionism is about this miraculous event where the holy name of Jesus appears in the sky, and pious people are drawn up towards it, and the wicked are repelled by it, and they're falling downwards. Andrea Pozzo's is an allegory which is more narrative in a way, because it represents the founder of the Society of Jesus, Ignatius of Loyola, receiving this light from Christ and that light getting refracted through him to the 4 different continents. Okay, so with that, I conclude the lecture for today. Before I take questions, I would like to, oh, I forgot this. This is an important point. So when Andrea Pozzo finished his feeling in the Church of St. Ignatius, he moved to Austria. So these are some of the works he did in Austria, smaller in scale than at Sant Ignacio. And thanks to the publication of his treatise, where he had explained how he arrived at his compositions, this kind of painting spread across Austria, Germany, and Europe. And a lot of the compositions owe a debt to well, Italian feeling painting in general, but specifically to Putzo for their widespread popularity. Okay, so I would like to just very quickly thank all these people over here for making this whole series of lectures possible. I'm going to go chronologically. So Consul General Stefania Costanza, I think we started this series in 2018, and from the very beginning, she was very positive about it, and I'm very grateful to her because it's been a pleasure. And Iram Kazi, who I've worked so closely with her over the years. It's a pleasure working with her. And initially, I was told it would be a different institution, and that didn't work out. And then we did it with the CSMVS, and it was great. The first person I was in contact with was Renuka Muthuswamy, who was fantastic, and she designed the original flyers, which I absolutely love. I've never loved seeing my name in print as much as on these flyers. And eventually, Anupam, who has been a great help with with answering questions that I don't know answers to during these lectures. Rashmi, Samiksha, Smita Patre, Onkar Abhyankar, and finally the person I'm yet to meet, Francesca Amendola, who we've spoken on the phone and has been very, very helpful. So thank you to everybody. And I should also mention, I had a really huge problem trying to find certain images because I don't have photographs of every detail and stuff. And Dr. Emil Kren at the Web Gallery of Art was very kind, gave me permission to use their images. So a lot of the images I have on these, when they're not labeled, they're either mine or they're from the Web Gallery of Art. I'm very, very grateful for that. Okay, I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Reshma. Thank you so much for this. Reshma, we have the questions here, and we would really very much like you to,
Should we start with that one question that was unanswered?
Sure. Okay. So, well, that question was about the book that was there, and that
yeah, the book I answered, the one about the angels and the frames.
Oh yeah, that some of the angels, they seem to be carrying some frames. So whether these are fictive or are they actual three-dimensional?
Yeah, can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me share the screen. Okay. Can whoever asked the question be unmuted, because I'm not sure. I'll just go over the images if you can tell me which image, because I don't know what you're referring to.
It's an anonymous query, so if the gentleman or the lady would like to ask the question, if you could be allowed to, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah. Is it in any of these images?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you guys listen to me?
Yes.
Yes.
So the picture was of the triumph of the name of the Jesus.
Okay.
So in that picture, I found that there are like 8 angels.
Are you talking about these angels here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Also to the bottom, there are like two angels.
Yes.
Yeah. So are these real?
Yes, these are three-dimensional.
Because in the bottom of the, if you look at the two angels on the bottom, there is like shadow effect over them.
Yeah, that's part of the illusionism. Let's see. I have just. Oh, you know what? I can just let me.
Yeah, if we look closely, they have like shadow effect over them.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's part of
the
the. Is this what you're referring to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the let me just go back to a different slide. Yeah, this slide on the right. This image. So the illusion is when you're looking at this, right? Is beyond, above the church, in the sky is this IHS, okay, with a bright light, okay? And these figures are being repelled by that light. They can't bear that light, so they're falling into the church, right? And as they're falling into the church, these two angels who are part of this entire group of angels, you see these two angels right on the top. So they are counterparts of those. They are beneath these figures. As these figures seem to, the illusion, the way I read it is, the angels in shadow over here are close to the ceiling. Okay, so they're close to the top of the ceiling. Whereas this mass, this triangular mass of figures, is falling downwards into the ceiling. And as they fall down, they're blocking the light from here from arriving all over the angels. That's how I would read it. Does that make sense?
Similarly, like I found like the angels on the top half, which
Yes.
are on the left and right. Yeah, the angel on the left side.
Yes.
No, the lower one. Yeah.
Yeah.
How to say it? The angel who is in the upper half, but on the right side. That one, yeah.
Yes.
It looks like it is painted.
No, it's this is definitely stucco and it's three-dimensional.
Okay.
This is not painted. These angels are three-dimensional.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can't hear you, Anupam.
Thank you very much, Prakat. You see, all these questions are important because for every one person who's asking a question, there are about 30 of us who have this question in our head. So thank you very much. I will take up some of the questions that have been put into the question answer section here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is that before I go on to this about maintenance, these are technicalities, we'll take that later. One is this, because there are a number of questions which allude to the same thing, that says that why are we painting other countries and other continents onto the paintings?
Very simple answer for that. The Jesuits were missionaries, okay? And the Jesuits were very different from the other Catholic orders in the sense that they took a fourth vow of obedience, other than poverty, chastity, and obedience. Poverty, chastity, humility. They had a fourth vow of obedience to the Pope in matters of mission. So even today the Pope is a Jesuit. But if Pope were to tell any Jesuit, I want you to go to X place to convert the people over there, they had taken a vow they would obey. No matter what, they would obey. Okay? So the Jesuits are known, they were very important for the Catholic Church in combating heresy, in combating the attacks from the Calvinists, from the Lutherans, the Protestants. They were also instrumental in spreading Catholicism in India, in China, in Japan, in South America, North America. So this having these representations of different peoples is a very strong statement about what their mission is, pun intended.
Right. Alex Coutinho asked, and why was a French king depicted in Bacicco's work? Any particular reason?
Okay, this is very complex. I can't give you a proper answer, but I'll just tell you, there was a lot of politics going on with the French king, the Spanish monarchy, power tussles, and the Pope. So the Jesuits, for a certain amount of time, had good relations with Louis the 13th, 14th, I can't remember. But I mean, I've seen letters written by Bacicco's patron, Father General Oliva, to the French king, congratulating him on the birth of his son, the Crown Prince. So the French king is one of the important rulers who is Catholic, whose knee bends before the name of Jesus, right? He's one of those people who adores the name of Jesus. So that's why he's the king.
Right.
He and his people.
Right. We have Arvind Paranchpai, who works at the Nehru Planetarium, and he was wondering that, often you have these representations of astronomy, the zodiacal constellations and depiction of the planets. So do you have some of them here, which we, in these particular frescoes that we talked about today, or
astronomy? I don't think so.
Not in these ones.
Yeah, in the most, there's a distinction to be made between astronomy and astrology, because both were considered more or less the same thing at that point. This is also the time that Galileo was carrying out his experiments. I don't want to say something really stupid, but I think at the Church of St. Ignatius, there is an observatory somewhere near where the dome was supposed to be. I am not 100% sure of this, but if you were to look up information on that, that might help. And no, not that I can think of any specific astronomical references in either of these two.
Okay. Talking about the planets, if we go now to the world of the painting, so to speak, Ms. Gayatri Sapru asks that, are the muted tones in the paintings more as a result of the passage of time, or is it an intentional distance from more garish colors, being that it is a Jesuit composition?
Okay, this is a very difficult to answer question, but I'm just going to be very blunt here.
Yeah.
The colors in Bacicco's paintings are very rich, actually. Okay? I wouldn't call them muted at all. That said, the frescoes have been cleaned recently, in recent years, and there's always the question as to what was the original like and how much of the cleaning is overcleaning. One of the things that I have not been able to figure out, for instance, is the central IHS. Has that been overcleaned maybe? Because the IHS is not very easily legible. Or rather, not the IHS, sorry, below the IHS, the three nails in a heart. That's something I've studied, and it's very clear if you take a close-up with a photograph, but with the naked eye, you can't really make that out. And that's a very important part of the composition if you're looking at the iconography of the work. So I don't know. I would just say this: in Bacicco's painting, those are not muted colors at all. Even after being cleaned, those are rich colors. They're very typically Baroque. In Andrea Pozzo's painting, the colors are closer to pastel, and take this very loosely. And there is, I am not sure how to read it, because if you look at or how to understand it, because if you look at the fake cupola, which is on oil on canvas, it has very dark coloring. Okay, whereas the pendants right below are very bright in color. So it's like two different palettes, but they're close in time, same artist. So I don't know. I can't answer that question. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Regarding paints and pigments also, there are a few questions related to that. So I think I think what we could answer just now in terms of what are the pigments and paints used, these are, you see, when you make frescoes, because it is a line support, you need pigments that are compatible with this alkaline medium. So for centuries, it is almost the same earth pigments that have been used most commonly. And even today, when you make frescoes, there are similar earth colors that are used. So that has not changed too much. So I think that takes care of queries that are related to the material. Then about, how were they painting, how the artists were painting? Yes, the artists were painting standing. That they down and they just painted standing. And yes, they had assistants for various types of things. Reshma, actually, there was a question was also related. I thought I should ask you also. Are you aware that there were assistants with both Baciccio and Putzo? It's not. Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Of course.
Full-fledged.
Yeah.
This is not Michelangelo.
Right. And then Errol is asking that, can you please share the link in the chat for the image of fresco characters from the slide of the Jesuit now?
Yeah.
Okay. And that reflection of the monogram on the shield, was that a reflection of the monogram on the shield, or was it straight away Jesu written on the shield?
No,
I think it was written straight. It's written. If it was reflection, it would be laterally inverted. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as restoration is concerned, yes, you're right, Shloka Thakur. Yes, they were restored at different periods of time. Yes, and they have been continuously maintained. I think these are the questions today. These are most of the questions today. And okay, there's one question that has just come in from Saurabh Kulkarni. Do we know anything about the religiosity of the painters themselves?
I can't hear you, Anupam.
Do we know anything about the religiosity of the painters themselves? How devout were they? Okay, maybe I'll try directly without the microphone. Now, can you hear me? No? Can you hear me now? Nobody can hear me.
Sir, it's good for me. I
think
ma'am is facing some issue. Let's
all right.
just give...
Okay. Okay, I'll just, okay. Reshma, can you hear now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So this was, do we know anything about the religiosity of the painters themselves? How devout were they? Could you say something on that?
Yeah, Andrea Pozzo was a lay Jesuit, so definitely very devout. Yes. Baciccio, I don't know.
So, all right. I think these are most of the questions, and Reshma has.
I'm going to, yeah.
Okay, one quick question. Sure. Because they are relevant. Sure. How are the Baroque stucco characters attached to the ceiling, given the weight?
Idea. It's fascinating. I don't know. You would just expect they would fall. I don't know, and I would love to know if anybody knows.
Well, if you see these, they are usually they have an armature.
Mm-hmm.
They have an armature that sort of fits into like a dowel into the superstructure, right? And then the stucco, which is lime and plaster and gravel and sometimes some organic material like horsehair and things like that. So all that is then molded around it. and that is how it remains in place. So it's pretty solid and consistent. Yeah. Okay. Reshma, you can't hear me. Anyway, I've answered that. Samiksha, could you hear me when I spoke?
Yes, it's good for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Srirang asks, how sensitive are these paintings to halogen and LED? Earth colors do not degrade so much, but yes, lighting is reduced nowadays so that some of the fugitive colors, so to speak, or the pigments, they do not fade away so much. I think we'll close at this, and Reshma has very kindly and very comprehensively thanked everybody who's involved. Stefania, Francesca, from the director of the Italian Cultural Center, and Signor Costanza, the Italian Consulate General, who initiated all these elements. I would also like to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador of Italy to India, because after all, it is from that umbrella that all these things are then proceeding forth. From the city, from Citi India, Devashish and Shaheen Dastoor for supporting the Citi CSMVS Art Conservation Project, under the aegis of which this program is also happening. And of course, the wonderful team from the Italian Center, Iram, thank you very much. Rashmi from the CSMVS, who's been coordinating this. Renuka, who was there right from the first series of the program that started. Abhyankar for the photographs. Mr. Sabyasachi Mukherjee, thank you so much for agreeing for having this program into its second leg. And we look forward to taking this ahead. This really is not possible without the wonderful group of people who've been attending this series, and consistently, I must say. And if it's consistently, Reshma, I must once again thank you for, like those rays of light that are coming from the highest point. You bathed us in them, and we are like, we're going towards that thing. And that's why we've been coming over and over again to bathe in this.
Well, lovely, I should do something that I've had angel assistants like Rashmi and Samiksha, and basically putting out fires at so many points. So thank you.
No, excellent. And to the host institution who for all the lovely support they provided in terms of logistics and also in terms of the internet facilities, and thank you to Zoom, and to all the lovely artists of whose lovely works we are getting enriched by. I must, for all of us here, before I ask Francesca Amendola to say a few words, I would like to say that some of the participants have written that that this has been extremely wonderful for them in these times of lockdown when they've all been at home. This has opened out the world for them. And I'm quoting this verbatim from what is written by the participants in their comments. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And also, before I ask Francesca Amendola to say a few words, there have been lots of queries whether this program would be released on YouTube. So Samiksha, would you like to answer that for us?
Yes, we would be uploading it on the CSMVS Mumbai YouTube channel shortly. So I think we will also announce it on our social media platforms once it's up, so that the audience is aware of the same.
Yeah, so before that, we'll have to take permission from Reshma and others, whose information is here in these lectures, and then we will inform all of you about it in due course, right?
Could I just say
yes,
something?
Reshma.
So in the last lecture, somebody had asked for reading material. I'm going to just share a link here in the chat. This is a post in my blog where I have the lectures by number, and right at the bottom, towards the end, there's a recommended reading for the lectures. So anybody who's interested could go there.
Sir, you're on mute. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. I just said that I've shared one email address because in case somebody has any further queries and questions. And Reshma is sharing her email address also, perhaps. Or if there are queries for Reshma, then please send them here and we'll forward them to Reshma so that her inbox doesn't get spammed with too many questions. Francesca Mendola, are you here with us? Francesca?
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Francesca. Francesca, we'd like you to, close this series, and we hope we have another series later on. But I request you to say a few words, please.
Well, I would like to thank you, Anupam, for this occasion. I'm really, really, really happy to say some words. I had the chance to take over Consul General Stefano Costanza and the director of Italian Cultural Center, and I'm so proud of this series of lessons, and I'm fully grateful, first of all, to Professor Reshma Nayyar, to the museum, and to you, Anupam, and to all the staff who is behind all of this. It's really been a pleasure and something joyful, I think. It is really a demonstration that sometimes beauty and knowledge can be a way of exchanging and of finding something beautiful, even if in hard times. I truly, truly hope and I trust that we can continue. Maybe I wish you will be willing to plan new lessons, new activities. It's really been great. And also I felt a little bit how much interest we have between the Indian attendants and how serious and deeply professional people were here attending with us. So I would like to say goodbye to everyone and really thanks for this occasion we had to stay together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Francesca. And long live the Indian-Italian friendship. We are two old civilizations. Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Reshma, once again.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you.
Thank you, Samiksha, and all the lovely participants. Thank you so much for enriching us too.
Thank you. Bye.